Welcome, everybody. We're glad to see you. My name is Cynthia Warner, and I'm the Arts Education Director for the Kentucky Arts Council. And I have a very special guest today, Joshua Brown, who works with Nebraska. Your new role is it program? No, what is your new title?
It's
Sorry,
called Community Programs Manager.
Community Programs Manager.
That is my role is new at our agency. I'm kind of splitting off from the education realm and I'm working with veterans and the arts and creative aging, which is like my favorite thing ever. Just love those programs that support arts for older adults. Arts, health, and wellness more broadly is part of what I do, as well as accessibility and 504 access. So a lot of really fun, cool things a part of this role, and I'm delighted to start digging in. We're just finishing our hiring process for the new arts ed manager, and once that is done, I will have fewer meetings and more time to do some great stuff. But it's a privilege to serve Nebraskans in this capacity, and I get to do stuff that I love. So I enjoy it. Now I'm trying to see our participants. Is that something I can do? Let's see. Or is it just hiding
So
behind?
far there are 12, I think, 12.
All right. I just need to adjust
Mhm.
my windows so I can see everybody, I think. Oop. See if I can. Is it buried? Hello. I want to see your faces too. But if not, I'll imagine how wonderful you all are
Well,
without.
I think most are do not have their camera on. I don't see.
All right.
Wait, you guys can turn your cameras on
The,
though.
You can turn your cameras on, and I really would love to hear comments, questions. There's a lot of back and forth in this presentation. This audience, I've run this presentation or a version of it with folks in Nebraska, but it was a lot of arts nonprofit professionals, professors, people who are working around the arts. But if we have artists in the conversation today, I would love to hear from you. I want to hear. Um, how you feel about it. That's a big part of what I would love to do today. So if you can participate, I'd appreciate that very much. So, oh, Stephanie Graves, hello. I can see you. So good. That means my windows are all set up right. Um, I'm going to go ahead and get started. And if you all feel like putting your camera on, great. If not, please throw us some words in chat. I'll have questions for you, and I'd love to hear your answers. Hello, Susan. How are you today? All right. Any artists in the room today? Stephanie, excellent. Definitely want to hear all about what you think on this topic because we are serving artists here in Kentucky and Nebraska, and what you all think about this is important. Um, that it's such a new thing and so quickly developing that not everyone's input is going to happen with these big technology companies. But this is a place where what you think matters. So let us know. So AI in the arts. It's a big and controversial topic right now. I did a version of this presentation about a year ago for Kentucky, and gosh, a lot has happened since then in the space. Of course, we've had a lot of political excitement here at the in the state arts agency world with politics, but also the AI space has not slept for a minute since we did this last. So a lot has changed. And we're going to talk about some of those changes. We're going to talk about your opinions. Let's get into it. So, can AI be used to make art? That's one of the big questions that I'm asking today. And I don't necessarily have an answer for you, but I want to have a conversation. I'm going to kick things off with this video. It is kind of a metaphor, I believe, if my media literacy is on point, uh, for AI and the arts and for just life in general and the changes that are happening and the way we feel about them. So I'll get this started, and then we'll get into the conversation.
They arrived nearly 5 years ago. The whole world's been in disarray ever since. No one's got the slightest clue as to where they came from or why they're here. Our governments say they've tried everything they can think of to contact them. Radio waves, flashing lights, directed energy binary transmissions, plus I'm sure 100 other methods they'll never share with us. Yet the dark cities make no answer. They simply float in place, quiet and immovable as boulders on the seashore. Some nations have resorted to more drastic measures to get their attention. North Korea even threw a nuke at the one that parked just on its side of their border with China. They may as well have thrown a rock at it for all the good that missile did. Though they claimed a mighty victory on state TV, the Dark City remained, visibly undamaged by the blast. Though they say nothing, do nothing, make no move toward aggression, their presence has a palpable effect on anyone or anything that lingers close to them for too long. To lay eyes on one is to feel a tangible bristle of unease, but to stand in their shadow is to feel the most horrible sort of dread, the kind that claws at your soul and forces you to run until, breathless, you can run no more. Entire neighborhoods and city blocks have been permanently abandoned for just this reason. Once vibrant places, overflowing with life, now silent as the grave. But beyond this unfortunate effect, this unpleasant tickling of our world's collective amygdala, they do nothing. They just exist silently, patiently, as though in anticipation of something. Anticipation, their other, far subtler gift to us. The whole world feels it now, a cold, dragging dread for something which has yet to come, something we do not understand, something that has already begun to consume our minds and hearts long before it ever arrives. How can we prepare for something we do not know? How can we know something that may be unknowable? The answer is simple. We cannot. So, for now, it's just us and them, waiting, waiting, waiting for whatever is yet to come.
Want to know more? Become an
All right,
art.
so this video is from the archive in between. They do a lot of these a lot. There's a lot of these videos because they're all made with AI. But I think it's kind of an interesting example of media that's commenting on the process of making, um, and it's just so unsettling. That's the thing I liked about the video the most. Um, what is it? What's it mean for us? Can we make art with it? I would argue that more so even than some of the other things that we'll see later, that this is kind of one of these pieces of media that tickles at the edges of art and technology. Um, it certainly is dreadful and I think kind of a thoughtful consideration of the issue, especially for people who have artistic tendencies. It's a big, strange thing. And it's not going to stop changing and not probably going to go away. But many of us, at least I do, I have a very administrative role. I use AI maybe twice, 2 or 3 times a week to facilitate stuff that I'm doing. An example of a way that I've used Claude, which is something I just started using, is I needed a table of contents made for a big messy document. And I was trying to do it myself with all the periods, trying to, you know, how you got the chapter title, dot, 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 page number. I couldn't get the dots right. And it was just driving me crazy. And I gave up and I threw it into Claude. And 5 minutes later, I had a perfect table of contents. Um, Something that I could have done myself, but it probably would have taken me an hour of this and that. So that was very, very useful. So how many of you all have used these platforms for anything? It could be for administrative purposes or for art making or whatever. Cynthia says yes. Susan, I saw your hand. Matthew, yes. Folks are using these technologies. Some people in the chat are saying things, and I am looking to see what they're saying. Haven't used it. I have. The last presentation on this topic that I did was the first one where everybody who showed up had said that they used it in some capacity, which I think is we're moving out of the people don't know what it is phase to the there are some people who use it and some people who don't, and they don't for a reason, kind of phase of the conversation. Um, so that's another reason why I'm interested in hearing from people who don't use it or don't want to use it for ethical concerns. Those are important things to talk about. So, does anyone use it once a week? What's your usage pattern like? Do you use it every day?
Jen Vaughn said in a chat, I use almost daily.
Almost daily? Uh, Jen, can you tell us a little bit more about that? You use it every day. What do you use it for? And you can reply in chat or hop off chat and speak as well. While Jen is cooking on that, Susan says I use it once every couple of months. I prefer to avoid it. Susan, would you mind hopping off mute and telling us about your use and why you prefer not to use it if you can?
Sure. I would say I prefer not to use it because of my, albeit limited understanding of the impacts that it can have, I think, environmentally and whatnot. I just pref don't want to become dependent on it. But I do see its use. And if I'm stuck when I'm doing reporting, that's primarily when I'm using it is to help me get started to get an idea going. And then I take it over from there and go back to how I would typically write my own report.
I think there's some really smart things you said in there that there's a real concern over getting too reliant on these things. And I have seen some studies that say that people who use these tools all the time start to get out of the habit of not using them. To a certain extent, it's like calculators in math class. Like we were, you learn everything longhand, but now we all have calculators. And to an extent, that might be the case with these tools as well. It's hard to say at this point, but I think that's a good approach. What you're doing, Susan. Use it when you need it, but remember how to do everything. That's that's important. We don't want to see our skills erode because of using kind of an virtual employee almost. It kind of turns everyone into a boss and not into a doer to a certain extent if you use the technology that way. Is there anyone else who wanted to share how they use it, how often they use it? And I want to hear about your experience with using it too.
Sorry. Jen said helping with tech problems, LOL.
Helping with
And
tech
then
problems.
Paul
Yes.
said a time or two per week to be more efficient with administrative tasks.
I think those are great, valid ways to use the technology. It certainly helps me a lot when I have tech issues. I'll get into it a little bit more how I use it on the regular. This and before I pass over this little clip art, I found that in Canva and just thought it was so great. The thought bubble is mine. Think happy thoughts. That's me at my computer all day long. So the things I want from artificial intelligence would be better assistance, something that's more reliable than the things that we have now. Although even since February, the new stuff is better. The person who said tech support, I make a lot of music with synthesizers and drum machines, and that stuff has a lot of MIDI protocols and signals that can get into kind of car accidents with each other if you don't connect the right thing to the right thing and program it just so. So, and I didn't go to synthesizer school. I don't think there is synthesizer school, but there's a lot of manuals and things that you have to kind of comb through, and it's really very handy to say, hey, this bass is not playing the notes that I programmed into it. Why? Or it's out of tune. I didn't know a synthesizer could go out of tune, but they can. And I put a baby monitor on top of a synthesizer, and it was no longer in tune with itself. That C1 was not in tune with C2, was not in tune with C3. And I said, why? And I said, well, it was the baby monitor. Oh, okay. I probably wouldn't have got that myself. So that's, helpful for tasks like technology support. You can also make little applications, things that will format documents for you. That's a way that I've used it a lot. Making a little script that will convert Word documents into PDFs and combine them in one step instead of two. Kind of lazy, but it saved me a little time. And that was very useful to me. Have you noticed other people using AI? Have you seen the AI slop, is what I'm really asking about, if you're familiar with that term. It's kind of a pejorative term that refers to stuff that was produced with artificial intelligence where you can really tell and it's not good. What was the context you saw that in, and how could you tell? How would you feel about it? I see Susan is typing. Thank you, Susan. I have certainly seen a lot of it on ye old Facebook and Instagram. Too polished pictures. You see it in grant applications. Cynthia and I were talking about this, where we get AI generated applications. The worst place I've ever seen was with NEA grants, believe it or not, kind of the very big grants that people are asking for. And I've been a reviewer for those grant processes before, and it was shocking to see how many applications were just start to finish AI, and you could tell through some of the little ticks of AI, lots of if then kind of statements and not this, not that, but the other thing kind of statements. Lots of M dashes, lots of bulleted lists, lots of paragraphs that are all the same length. And it is clear writing to a certain extent, but very, very boring to review a whole long grant from that. And I see some responses down in chat. You see images and infographics on social media, clearly misspelled text, especially in those generated images. They do better with text than they used to, but often looks really sloppy. You paint horses, and I see AI horses being sold with weird deformities. Yes, and we're going to talk a little bit about that process where people are using AI images for reference images and some of the mistakes that get reproduced through that. We'll be talking about that later. AI on Facebook and Instagram. It's really negative to me because it looks unnatural. I also see it written documents that don't sound natural. For those reasons, I'm very against it because it threatens people's creativity and independent thinking. That's Stephanie. Thank you. Yes, I hear you. AI slop is such a drag and not fun at all for a user, but also you lose something as a creative person if you're relying on these tools without any kind of deep thought behind it, because it's only going to put out anything as good as you put into it. We'll discuss that later as well. Things to expect in 2026. We've already seen some new models this year. There's a new video model that we'll see a product from down at the end of the presentation. Um, the context windows are getting larger. That means you can dump more data into it and have it produce a result that's accurate. Um, but certainly the image and video models are rapidly developing, and I think we'll see a lot of progress this year. And those situations where you see garbled text are becoming rarer and rarer, and the next iteration of image models won't have an issue with this. There's a new rumored model from OpenAI that I didn't have it's not released yet. I didn't have any good examples I could pull from, but I have seen other people on Reddit sharing images created by that, and I can't tell. I cannot tell. And I'm even in like a Reddit group that's all about vetting images for AI use, where we kind of talk about, oh, I see something out of place here, or this is wrong with that. And these new models are really, really, really hard to detect those kind of things. So a lot of issues. could come about as a part of that advancement. Um, Good news is we're not going to be replaced by AI. Even as it gets better, I really don't believe that some workforces in technology, especially, that might be a more relevant concern because it can do coding really well, really, really well. If somebody like me who does not know very much about coding can sit down and make a little application to do something simple like converting files, I imagine that folks who are very senior coders are able to do a lot more with them. And Claude's Anthropic is a company that makes Claude, which is an AI tool, and they're coming out with a new coding agent that is just way beyond anything folks have seen. It's called Mythos. So unless you're in tech, I think we're okay for now. Something to certainly keep an eye on. And it's not like things that happen in tech don't impact the rest of the economy that we all do participate in. So something to keep an eye on. I think the future of AI is a little bit more like the Flintstones than the Jetsons, though, if that makes sense. Like lots of helpful appliances and applications instead of broadly capable Terminator sort of HAL 2000 systems. And when I say Flintstones, like the trash can that's a parrot, or like the back scratcher that has, just single use things that are useful, but not the kind of super brain that's going to run your life or take over your job. That being said, AI agents, if you haven't heard this term before, are AI systems that are enabled to work on computers and move a mouse and order things on Amazon. Those things are quickly developing. They haven't been super reliable. Claudebot is a big example of one of those. And if you're deep into the AI nerd space, you'll know exactly what that is. But people are starting to experiment with more useful assistants. Kind of think what Siri could have been or should have been. Um, and I'm optimistic about those. We could all use a little bit of help, and they could be helpful. Now, the big companies have not really started releasing these agents because they are unstable and unreliable, even unsafe, at this point. So we'll see where that goes. That is kind of the direction they're all pushing in, though. Having tools that can do things for you instead of just tell you how to do things. Um, we'll see. We'll see where that goes. You have already talked about having seen AI images. I've talked a little bit about some of those tells. What are some of those tells that you all have noticed? Have you noticed AI images popping up in your feeds? My guess is that would be the case for most folks. Susan, how about you? I'm going to pick on you since you're on my screen. How can you tell when an image is made with AI? We talked about text.
I'll turn my mic on. I keep thinking of all of the images that people create to put as their like Facebook photo, and they all look the same kind of uh graphic style. And they look a lot like them, almost in a scary way. But when everybody's looks kind of the same, stylized, I'm like, okay, well, you didn't make that. Not
Right?
exactly. You didn't create that on your own.
Yeah, you see a lot of overlit photos. Like there, no one has 20 studio lights in the park. Um, but you'll see that sort of thing. You used to count fingers, but that's not really a thing anymore. Um, there are some tells. It's getting harder, like we've discussed, but things looking overlit or just not making a lot of sense. That's another one that I see a lot. I see a lot of these on Facebook. These quadruplets, 90 years old, these sorts of things where the photos are just a little too dialed in. Like whose hand is that exactly? Those kinds of things. And then obviously a stapler made of bread is a funny idea, but that's not a real image. This one, the stapler made of bread caught some people in a presentation I gave once. It's like, oh, I saw that and I thought it was really interesting. No, and then a lot of like the face of Jesus emerging from the girls in the lake, that kind of strange thing. Um, People have been doing things like this with Photoshop and with darkroom techniques for a long time, but folks use AI to make them now. I see it all the time. There are arguments for making art with uh, these tools, but I'm gonna run a prompt really quick, and you can see where we're at with it. It's not amazing, but it's funny sometimes. Well, I didn't spell administration right, but we'll see how far we get with that. And every time you put something in, it gives you a different result, which is really interesting. They're not deterministic. They're they run on probability, so it's kind of a big dice roll each time you put in. So that's kind of an argument against them being artistic. I'm going to read what it came up with. The architecture of art. The curtain rises bright and grand to applause that shakes the floor, but hidden safely off the stage is the work that built the door. They do not paint the masterpiece, nor do they dance the ballet's lead. They navigate the ledger lines to fund the artist's need. That's us. In quiet rooms with glowing screens, they draft the midnight grants, convincing boards and cautious wealth to back the things they can't. They balance spreadsheets, wrangle space, and market every show, the unsung pulse behind the scenes that makes the spotlight glow. So raise a glass to those who plan, who organize and scheme, the grounded minds and steady hands who subsidize the dream. Okay, it's not a good poem, but it's kind of fun and very gratifying to hear somebody so thankful for the things that Cynthia and I do all day long. So and even the OpenAI CEO, tech bro, Sam Altman has said AI might never write a good poem. It can do a lot of things and it can write a poem, but it might never write a great one because things like art and poetry are based in human experiences. And these are giant pools of human experiences, but kind of scrambled up and randomized, and you get a chance output. So you never really get a specific view of the world from things like this. You get an average view of the world, which is interesting in its own way. And you can ask interesting questions of that. Uh, what does it mean if we've got the psychological mean or average of everybody out there? Certainly something to pluck at and to think about, but it doesn't give you just one person's experience, which is so much of what we expect from an artistic experience. So I'm going to get out of this. That's the only time we're going to dive into any making of things with it. But I just wanted to illustrate how it will give you something, and it'll be relevant to what you asked for, but it might not be, and it's better than what I could do, perhaps. I'm not a poet, not really, but it's not exactly what we want from poetry. And that makes me feel good as someone who makes
Look at how the
art.
blue just pops.
We're going to take a minute to look a little bit more at
Look at how the
AI
blue just
video
Look at how the
creation.
blue
If
just
I
look
can
at how
get
the
these
blue
these
just
players
pops against
are
the orange.
going
It almost
automatically
feels
on me. So
three-dimensional.
I'm just going to it'll
yes, the
loop.
artist truly
Um,
outdid themselves this time.
Veo 3.1 is from Google. It's one of their kind of state-of-the-art uh, video creators, and it's pretty good. But if you look at it, you'll see the tells. They're very dreamlike. People disappear. The audio is oddly synced. Let's see if I can get it to start
Look at
from
how
the
the
beginning.
blue just pops against the orange. It almost feels three-dimensional.
Oh, right
Yes,
into the
the
sculpture.
artist truly
If you
outdid
if you see on the
themselves this
right-hand
time.
side, I'll start that over.
Look at how the
We
blue
have
just pops
our
against the
gal
orange. It
in
almost feels three-dimensional.
Yes,
right
the
into it.
artist truly outdid themselves this
But it's kind of
time.
like a magic trick where you're not always looking at that. The details where you're looking at tend to be more polished, but the things going on in the background doesn't always make sense. And certainly we hope the virtual woman who walked into the sculpture is doing okay.
Look at how the
Um,
blue just explodes off the canvas right there. It's incredible.
It really draws you in. I love the texture they achieved.
a year ago, this level, which is not perfect, was not possible. You see how it's paused, and this is a great way to tell if something is AI in video. If you pause it, any given frame is usually kind of halfway between frames. You see they've got these demon eyes. Um, so it doesn't, because of the way they generate things, it's not frame by frame exactly. The frame by frame quality is put on top. So you can see that if you pause anywhere, you'll get somewhere between frames, and that's useful. Especially because of how these technologies can impact public discourse, especially as these things develop. It's already bad enough. I'm sure you all have seen uh, what our public leaders have published online with AI tools, uh, propaganda. These things are very easy to produce. You've got the United States and Iran going back and forth with propaganda videos that people are watching and sharing. So if it wasn't a concern already, it certainly will be going forward. We've got a big midterm ahead of us. These are things to keep an eye on as we proceed through our political process.
I find the use of texture fascinating. It almost looks like it's moving when you stand here.
I really love this example because it's like the foreground stuff kind of makes sense, but watch the bartender in the background and what's happening with that drink.
I find the use of texture fascinating. It almost looks like
What's
it's
he doing?
moving when you stand
What's
here.
he making? I you also see twins, and that happens a lot in AI video too, where you have people who look just the same. You've got these two guys with glasses chatting in the background, but they seem to be the same guy or very nearly the same guy. That's another way at this point that you can tell if something is a generated video or if it is just a short clip. I don't know. This still seems very AI flavored to me. The art on the wall, everything really. But this is where the stated, kind of the cutting edge stuff is for most people. Most people could go out and make these. I made these with the Google with Gemini 3. 3.1 VO is the name of the model. You can go in there and make things just like this. Although there is a lot of this video technology that you have to have more specialized knowledge to use well. I'm specifically thinking of this Chinese model called Seed Dance Pro 2 that makes unbelievably strong results, but most people don't have access to it yet. That is coming. AI and public art proposals. Now, this is something kind of touching on something we spoke about already, where we have horse painters who are getting their reference images from AI, and it gives you a out of proportion horse. This is happening with public art proposals. It's very easy to throw, oh yes, I want some nice children and some older adults in this image, and I want my local landmarks in this image, and I want some history piece in it. And you can throw it in a generator and come out with an image that will synthesize these things, put all these things into the same picture. But if you take a look at the sketch and the final product here, we've got this train and some people working in a field, and the train bridge or the bridge behind them is very not a bridge that would work at all. I would not put my horse on that bridge, that's for sure. This is happening more with public art, just because, especially because of the way proposals work. You've got to do a lot of work to make a good proposal for a public art piece. A lot of times they want to see an example, a panel will, before it comes in, and panels are a lot of work too. This next slide, I love this spinning cat, so I had to put it in. That's from Canva. Thanks, Canva. This is an article called "What Happens When AI Enters Public Art" by Patricia Walsh. And it's about a public art process that she was a part of, where a lot of folks were submitting AI-generated images for the proposals, but also the panels that were reviewing these images were also using AI to do the reviews. So a lot of the humans were cut out of this whole artistic process because of the way that folks were using AI. It was not good. Not good from my perspective, and I think most art folks would agree because you get goofy stuff when there's no people a part of the process. Goofy stuff like your train bridge that would never hold a train or a cart. Um, but also just boring stuff that we don't need on our walls. So I would encourage you, if you're a part of the public art process, if on either side of it, to really be very cautious about how you use AI tools and consider not using them for review processes at all. The National Endowment for the Arts does not allow state arts agencies to use AI in grant review, and they don't use it in their grant reviews either. Uh, I think that's a good thing because that cuts a lot of the human out of the process. I have done an experiment before where I've taken grant guidelines and somebody's grant proposal and dumped it in and said, "Hey, where are the strengths and weaknesses in this application?" It did a good job. That doesn't mean we should do that. I think the subjective human experience is important when you're reviewing proposals and projects.
You have a question in the chat. How are the panelists using AI to review? That's from Ray.
You can use AI to summarize proposal text into from a two-page document to a three bullet point thing that's easy to digest, but you miss a lot of context and you miss the way the words are written. You can also, I mean, there's a lot of different ways that you could do that to filter and sort and summarize and to expedite your review process. Reviewing grants for the NEA, it takes a lot of time. They'll give you 50 grants, speaking as a reviewer, and each grant might be 10 or 20 pages long. Not usually 20 pages, but 10 pages long. And it takes an hour to do a good job. If you use an AI tool that says, give me the highlights, the strengths and weaknesses, you could get a score in 5 minutes. Um, so that's one way that people could use AI to review. I think it's not a good thing. Any other thoughts here before we move on to our next section? Thank you, Ray. Here in this image, we've got two pictures. One is one that I took at a creative aging program that was happening in Little Vista, Nebraska. It's a wonderful group of folks that get together to paint every week. They do beautiful stuff. That is the image on the left, and that's not the best picture in the universe. But I wanted to put forth something that wasn't perfect. I put that into Gemini and said, make another image like this, and it spit out the one on the right. It is awful similar. It is awful similar in a lot of ways. Now it's got those AI tells it's a little it's like a little overlit, it's a little too perfect, but it's very similar. And when I did this presentation for folks in Nebraska, my concern was that people are using these tools to maybe be dishonest with their grant reports. And I wanted to illustrate how easy it would be to do that. You see, we've got a couple of Eleanors in the AI generated image, which there were a couple of Barbaras in ours. So, but always watch for twins, watch for things that don't make mistakes. But the point of this image is that it's really easy to falsify things with this technology. So something to keep an eye out for. They all have 5 fingers now. It's much harder to detect than it used to be, but if we see the paintings that folks are making, they all look like the same painting. And I think some of those brushes are in the cups upside down. But gosh, it's a lot closer to reality. And I gotta say, the La Vista Library has big, beautiful windows that are open. It's like an idyllic space. It's not that different, but different enough. So look closely at images. This is an interesting example where on the left, this is an actual picture from the La Vista Library Creative Aging Group. And then on the right, I synthesized 2 images from that meeting. So that one on the right is actually an AI image, but it's a mashup of images. So that's another way that people are using imagery to change reality, maybe not reality, but the way reality is reported. So the image on the right, those are all real pictures and real people from a place where I was, but it's not actually real. It's not how the room is laid out or anything like that, but we can see our participant in the center is the same in both. She is a great painter, by the way. I always test new models when they come out with an image prompt, something that will test the creativity and the ability to produce something coherent. And the prompt I use is, please make a 2-panel comic about the ironies of working for a state arts agency. And for a long time, it did not do a great job, but it's getting better and better. And the most recent iterations will even let you choose the style if you want it to be like dark claymation, things like that. You could do the same idea in a lot of different ways. I like this one. It says, I'm ready to champion the transformative power of the arts across our great state. Let the funding flow to groundbreaking projects. Right after I spend the next 3 days formatting this 90-page compliance report on pencil procurement procedures. And that is real. That is very real for those of us working for the state. There is a lot of minutia. Even today, we get money to spend on personal development at our agency, and you've got to fill out a lot of forms to get there. I spent my money on our Lifetime Arts collab subscription, but I had to do a bunch of forms to get there for the $80 a year that it costs. So in a sense, it's starting to understand people more. And obviously, this model had to understand what my job was like without knowing anything about me and the issues that people might run into. So there's a level of understanding here that's more advanced than it was. I wish I had the last couple of cartoons I've made in the past, but they were on the edge of coherent, and this actually speaks to something. I think the models are getting funnier, which is also another strange thing. Making jokes that are new instead of just searching online for jokes, things like that. It's very strange. Now I wanted to show an example of something that I'm personally interested and excited about. Something that I think creative people can use to come up with interesting new ideas. And this is very experimental. This is kind of just barely available to the public. I don't have access to it. I think you have to spend a lot. You have to get the premium $200 a month subscription to access to this experiment. But I think it's interesting. I think for artists, it's worth imagining how you might use this technology. I would love to have a discussion if folks are interested to about what is theft and what's fair use, reminding everyone that all these models are trained on data that's scraped from the web that they didn't pay for. And there's an analogy where, an art student also goes on the internet and looks at a lot of pictures and reads a lot of books, and it absorbs things the same way. Yeah, but the art student isn't going out and making money on it the same way. So I think there's a big discussion before we can say there's no ethical issues with using these things to make interesting images and interesting projects. But I'll run this for you all, and I'd love to hear what you think about it. So these are 3D environments that are generated. They're frame by frame generation, so it's not actually making like a model in Blender. It's just kind of synthesizing each frame as it comes. So you're kind of creating an interactive video more so than a video game, if that makes sense. This prompter has said, make a world for this Shiba Inu to play in, and it did that. You'll see people uploading sketches and making a world out of that sketch, which is interesting. licensing money is pretty amazing. This was really stood out to me, where the man makes the little cardboard box character. In real life, takes a picture and uploads it here, and then it's then animated and remixable and changeable. So as a person that likes to create things and explore things and plays video games sometimes, it's really exciting to think that I can potentially do something I never could do as a non coder. I'm not part of a big development team, but I could potentially implement a funny little idea in a kind of quick way and make something interesting. Even if it's just for my own edification and enjoyment, it sure would be fun to see my drawings come to life. Um, that's one of those that really kind of gets me thinking about how all these things came to be and how we'll use them in the future. There are people out there saying, I cannot wait until I can just make my own whole world and live in it forever. And that's a little, I mean, it's tempting and scary and sounds just like The Matrix, which is not a happy movie if you haven't seen it. Um, but that is out there. I don't know if any of you have played with Genie or anything like it, but it's kind of shocking and amazing. It's also at the very beginning of this technology. If you turn around, if you see a flower, and you turn around and look the other direction and look for that same flower again, there's a good chance it's not going to be there anymore. These things also start to break down after a few minutes because they don't have that long-term memory where like a video game has a file that it reads and displays those things, and the file is always there, so it always displays it the same way. These don't work like that. They just make up each frame as they go. So it's very prone to forgetting and getting off track, and not working as expected. But this is probably the worst it'll ever be. And they're investing huge amounts of resources to make that happen. And this is a good time to talk about resources, because something like Project Genie takes massive, yes, thank you, Ray, massive amounts of energy to create and water as well. We live in Nebraska. I live in Nebraska, and we think about water rights and water issues all the time because we're a very agricultural state, that is situated above a very big aquifer. Um, I was a pipeline fighter back in the early 2010s where they were going to run a new pipeline over the aquifer, where they would not be able to detect spills of oil or petrochemicals that would be shipped through these pipelines. And it could potentially damage the aquifer that we use to water our crops in Nebraska. And that would be really bad. But also really bad is depleting aquifers and water supplies. Our industrial processes, especially agriculture, draw an immense amount of water out of the systems that we have. And you can't reproduce rain and snow runoff and things like that. So this is something that's a real concern. Now, if you look at how much water a data center uses versus a hectare of, a soy or something, the soy takes a lot more. It's a lot more water to do agriculture. Um, but this also gets me thinking about biofuels and why are we using food to make energy, and like there's a lot of things that play into this conversation about data centers, water use. but they are real concerns, especially as these projects grow and demand more resources. There might be more efficiency in the way these models work, but then there'll be more demand too. So it's kind of this Ouroboros, this snake that's eating its own tail to a certain extent, where the more success they have, the more resources they use. And our infrastructure in the United States is outdated. There are small communities, especially, that will have a data center come in and then start having higher expenses for electricity or even brownouts in some situations. That's not the most common thing that happens, but it does happen. And folks that want to dismiss environmental concerns out of hand are really not thinking very deeply about this. I think that there are things that we can do to mitigate. Certainly, our infrastructure needs to be updated for a lot of reasons. Our power grids are not as stable as they need to be or as efficient as they need to be. We still burn a lot of coal in this country and use a lot of natural gas, and these things do have an impact on our environment. So I don't think that people are going to stop building data centers. And in fact, AI data centers are like a small portion of the data centers that we use for the internet and Instagram and Facebook in general. So I think the recent concerns about AI data centers are really pointing towards this larger issue of data centers and using water and electricity in ways that we can't necessarily afford. But I do believe that as voters, we can do something about it. We've seen a lot of communities lately saying, we don't want a data center here. We don't have the infrastructure for it. It's going to make my power bill 50% higher. That's not okay. So if this is happening in your community, talk to your lawmakers about it. Have honest conversations, well-informed conversations about the consequences of data centers, technology expansion, and the infrastructure that's needed to make sure that we can keep doing our thing without having a bigger water bill or water shortages. Again, in Nebraska, water is such a big deal. And we're very concerned about that here. I think you should be too. So talk to your lawmakers, folks. I have one more piece today, and it's a video made with Seed Dance 2, which is kind of the very cutting edge of video generation. And it's a very biased look at the topic because it's an AI filmmaker, whatever you think of that, who is using, again, the tools to make a comment on what is happening in the arts and AI space. Simon Meyer.
Chef, he's here. Blaustein, from The Plate, the biggest food magazine in the country. He destroyed Luciano's last month. Called it cafeteria food with a god complex. Luciano closed 2 weeks later.
Shit. Okay, what did he ordered?
The ossobuco.
I'll bring it myself.
Here's the ossobuco, sir. Enjoy.
So what tools do you use?
Tools.
The equipment, the tools. What makes the food? Sir, it was me. I made this with my hands.
But you used a stove and a pot.
I did use a pot, yes.
So you didn't really make it, not entirely. Not with your hands alone.
Sir, if you taste it, I think...
No! You made nothing here.
The oven braised this, the stove reduced the sauce, the thermometer told you when to stop. That's not cooking, you're just operating machines. If you could just try a bite, you'd understand.
There's no soul in food like this, no emotion. You can taste when someone's heart is in it. This is empty.
But sir, I created that dish with all my heart.
You didn't create anything. You assembled other people's ideas and put your name on it.
I don't need to taste this. I know exactly what it is. Slop.
Why did that man say you didn't make it?
Because I used tools. A stove. Pots.
Did you decide what it tastes like?
Yes.
Did you decide what goes in it?
Yes.
Did you decide what it looks like?
Yes.
Then you made it. That man is just angry he can't cook.
All right. So obviously from a very specific perspective, the creator is saying to other AI filmmakers, you know, don't let the haters get you down. But I do think that there are some interesting things that are raised by this modeling but effective video. When you're creating things with AI, you do get to say what it looks like and what it tastes like. Um, to a certain extent, it's not all done by the machine. The more words you put into it, the more control you have over what comes out of it. Does that make it art? I don't know. Certainly, some people will argue for it. I think there are arguments against it too, because of all the images and videos that this machine was trained on. Somebody actually held a camera for those. This one was not produced that way. Although I think editing is uh, is where some of the art comes in with these things. The more human hands are on these tools, the more lifelike of a video that you get produced, and that goes for all of the different things with AI. The more that humans are involved with the process, the better the output will be. What did you guys think of this video? Cynthia said she had to go get her battery charger, so I think it's just I'll be reading directly from the chat if anyone wants to add from the chat. Susan, you're still here. What do you think of something like that?
I guess I would just say it presents an interesting perspective that I would not look at it from that way, not as I don't use AI myself. Um, I'm not sure I agree with the message entirely, but it's interesting.
It's an argument. Yeah. I think I'm on the same page as you. I don't exactly know where I land, and there's certainly a lot of ethical concerns with creating things using other people's stuff, sort of. Um, but then, like, I think of a collage piece that's, for sale at Hot Shops, one of our arts markets, things like that. Um, I don't have a problem with that. I don't think most people would. So I think there's definitely boundaries to think about and more thought to be put into it in general. We're just kind of at the very edge of things at the moment. But these conversations will continue and be more relevant to artists. I think it's worth thinking about before it gets really, really good. Um, Cynthia, I don't know if you're back yet or if you have your battery charger. Uh, but I wanted to open the floor. If anyone's got any thoughts or comments, throw them in the chat. Pop out onto video, and we can have a conversation. But that is about my time. If no one has any. Oh, Jen Vaughn says, I like using AI reference photos, sometimes specifically because they're not copyrighted. Well, that's true. Something to think about for sure. No, I'm with you, Jen. Definitely there's a place for these tools, what it is, what it means. I think the verdict is out for me. Um, but you certainly can do interesting things with them. An example of something that I will do with my daughter is she sometimes will, I foolishly let her know at one point that you can make any picture you want with an AI on your phone. She's 3, And she says, "Oh, I want to see a family of purple dragons, and then they're all wearing backpacks, and all the backpacks are the same color." And then you get a picture of that, and that's kind of fun. And then you can animate that picture very quickly. And so that is something she never stops asking for now. So be careful. Ray, you popped onto video. Do you have a question?
I'm just interested in the discussion. I feel really new to AI conversation, which is why I came on. So I think my response to the video is it did present a very like black and white view of like you're either on this side of this is fine what you're doing and keep going, or the restaurant person who like threw down the plate. And I think that I'm personally sort of like questioning like, do I need to be somebody who throws down the plate, or do I need to have a more balanced view? I'm not really sure.
Yeah. In terms of like, yeah, that's good. As a piece of art, that video is very polemical. It has a very static point of view. There's not, I mean, it's tugging on your heartstrings to make its points. I kind of like the spooky video that I introduced the talk with a little bit better. Something that's commenting more broadly on the forums. Lennon, what do you think?
Yeah, I was going to say, I find it all interesting, and I'll try to keep this short too. But there's so many artists these days that are sampling stuff. I mean, you could go back to Richard Prince, where he took the Marlboro photos, erased the Marlboro image out of it, and then it became his photo, even though that was a whole nother artist who took those Marlboro Cowboys. He just erased that, became his. You can talk about Duchamp with his ready-mades. I mean, he didn't fabricate half of that stuff. He just set it on some lights. We could go into, you know, a lot of people who are screen printing and like Andy Warhol, for instance, not even making a lot of his stuff, and he's just taking Marilyn Monroe's photos and somebody else is printing those for you, and it suddenly becomes concept. I'm definitely, you know, not about like always taking stuff, but artists have been borrowing so much through their process and learning. And I mean, you could go back ages where you didn't even draw the nude model. You were behind the guy drawing his drawing who was drawing the nude model. You know, so I mean, like, it is just so much borrowing and using, and I just look at it so much as a tool. Like when I'm writing an artist statement, I'm dyslexic, so I'll put down a whole bunch of information and let Gemini or chat help me kind of understand it. Whereas I would have to outsource that to an art historian who might have a whole nother vantage point themselves. And I could like put prompts in to make it not as biased, or like, you know, what are you seeing in some of this, or what is kind of coming forward? And it's like a free way of having a dialogue for myself. But you know, I definitely understand too, like you got to have the human element still involved with it completely. I just, it's such a, this was a great conversation just to be had, just to hear where everybody's at with it. And I'm down with it as well, with the environmental problems as well. It's such a weird situation, but it's interesting when we talk about collage artists who are just finding magazines and slamming them together, that becomes theirs. I mean, it's so hard to sue somebody. I mean, like Paul Pfeiffer, for instance, he took all these Nike commercials, and then Nike tried to sue him and they couldn't. So they ended up hiring him to make commercials for him. And so yeah, it's just, it's an interesting way of what's happening with art right now. I mean, grad school was the same way. I would be painting a bird, somebody else would, and then there'd be an argument of who's painting a bird, and it's supposed to be their bird now. And it's interesting. And I, you know, I look at the Simon Meyer video, and it is, the way I look at it is tools. I mean, you are still writing something in, you know, composing it. I mean, just like if you go to a musical event, that composer isn't playing all those instruments, but he is choreographing that situation for you. So it was cool. So I appreciate, Joshua, just hearing where you're coming from, and trying to keep on my toes, because I know these professional situations are looking out of, are you using AI to write your grants or writing certain dynamics? And you know, you just got to be careful, of course, so you're not stealing. But it's tough, because you know, you got Picasso over here saying, you know, who's really stealing, when you know, if it's becomes yours, is it yours now because of the way you've done it? So it's pretty cool though. I mean, like you're saying, it's so new that it's going to bloom even more as we keep going. So thank you for that time.
Yeah, it really pulls on those threads of questions about ownership and proprietarianism and who should own what. Um, those are all human constructs too, that have been beat on and shaped by artists for a long time. So thank you for that, Lennon. That was really interesting. Does anyone else? Lauren O'Brien in the chat says like how "Never Gonna Fall in Love Again" uses a theme from Rachmaninoff's Symphony Number 2. Musicians have been borrowing from each other for a long time. I think that's a really good point. And I'm somebody like you all know now. I do a lot of electronic music making with synthesizers, which does create a brand new sound, but also a sampler, which is something where you can put music into it and cut a little bit out and change the way it sounds, reinterpolate it, and then make it, into a whole new thing. And that's almost exclusively what rap and hip hop has done in recent years, is use samples from other, soul record or what have you to make something that's new. And maybe they change it a lot and slow it down and put a bunch of filters on it, or maybe they don't. Um, but we usually don't worry too much about that anymore, although it was a big deal during the ascendant years of hip hop. And a lot of people question that. And there were a lot of people who got sued, and there's still something called an